All right, let's go. Another big-time matchup, and the Eagles have another massive opportunity this weekend, as Pittsburgh will not only be without George Pickens, but also one of their key pieces on defense. And even with Saquon being the clear focus, why should we expect the passing game to produce more this week? Plus, the battle for Pennsylvania is going to be physical. But what's the main area Philly can take advantage of? Let's talk about it. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? Do me a favor real quick, drop a like, because if the Eagles beat the Steelers this week, I'm going to give away a signed AJ Brown jersey to one random subscriber. I mean, come on, we got a big game this week for the Battle of Pennsylvania. And as crazy as it might sound, the game against the Steelers will be the first time all season that the Birds have played back-to-back games at the Link. Granted, that's not nearly as long as the last time the Steelers won a game in Philadelphia, which was 1965 in case you're wondering. Yet one of the first stats that naysayers want to bring up is the fact that Philly has to deal with a guy who's 6-0 in his career against the Eagles, and 4-0 specifically in Philadelphia, with Russell Wilson throwing for 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, and only 1 interception during that span.
Yeah, but that's old, but I'm aware.
I mean, good for him, but he hasn't played the Eagles since 2020. And he dang sure hasn't played this Vic Fangio defense. The number 1 defense in the NFL that's allowing just 284 total yards per game. Add on top of it that Wilson will be without star receiver George Pickens, and it ain't going to be easy. Still, they aren't to be taken lightly.
It's always a delicate balance. Ideally, you want to get good pass rush with 4 and be able to play the coverages you like. But sometimes with these mobile quarterbacks, that's not always possible. You may have to add a guy or two and play. But, yeah, he's mobile still, really playing good, and it'll be a challenge. It'll be very similar to what we just had a couple days ago.
We got to be ready to play our best football. This is what it's all about, these moments. And it's going to be a heavyweight fight, and we got to find a way.
There's a reason they're 6-point underdogs by now. Look out, Pittsburgh's 10-3 against the spread and 5-0 as an underdog. Plus, Wilson's won each of his last 4 matchups against the number 1 total defense. However, the Birds have a couple weapons that's going to make that task difficult for the Steelers, starting with the NFL MVP.
Man, really excited about this one, man. This Pennsylvania State Championship. They're a really good football team. They need no endorsement from me. They're the winners of 9 straight. When you look at the tape, man, you see exactly why. The acquisition of Saquon Barkley has got to be the most significant acquisition in the NFL in 2024.
The first down, and a ton more. Barkley, touchdown.
Barkley slips 2 tackles and picks up the first down, jumping up in the air.
And he's going to go all the way. What a night. What a season. What a player.
I can't blame Mike Tomlin for being concerned about Saquon, especially when teams like Baltimore and the Commanders talked about being able to contain him beforehand. Yet we saw what he was able to do even with their concerted focus, leaving Tomlin to admit you can't completely limit him with his Philly squad, but it's going to cost you if you can't minimize him in at least some way. Now, to his credit, the Steelers have only faced Saquon once, but they made it a nightmare on the ground for him, with Barkley running for just 6 yards on 15 carries back in 2020.
I talked to him one time before we played him, and he told me it was going to be a long night, basically. And it was a long night. Last time I played the Steelers, I only ever played them once. I think I ended the game with like 10 rushing yards.
For the record, Saquon did still catch 6 passes for 60 yards in that game, so he played a role, just not as impactful as he's been for Philly. And not exactly a surprise, but the difference is that Tomlin said that was back whenever it was just Daniel Jones, so they were afforded the luxury of going all out to stop the only viable weapon New York had, leading to a 26-16 victory over the G-Men. Whereas now, they've got their hands full trying to limit the full complement of Philly's weapons on offense.
Man, they have the type of group that you got to make some real hardcore decisions about working to minimize.
Look, even with that being said, there's no secret that Pittsburgh's had tremendous success stopping the run. For one, they're the number 4 rushing defense, but they've been particularly strong as of late. For example, last week against the Browns, the defense held Nick Chubb to 48 yards. And in the earlier meeting against the Browns, Chubb was held to 59 yards on 20 carries. Plus, going up against Derrick Henry in Week 11, he was held to his second lowest rushing total all season of 65 yards. So obviously with Saquon on deck, you better believe the Steelers linebackers are on high alert.
Some teams are just unaware of how good Saquon is, so I think that's got to be your focus, especially playing a guy like that, a team like that, with all the pieces they got, a good O-line, good running backs, good quarterback, good receivers. Everybody got to just do their job. You never know what you're getting with him, so that's what I meant by being physical. You just got to bring the fight to them.
All those guys over there, from Cam to TJ to all 3 levels, from the defensive line to the linebacker to the DBs, they play really well. They do a really, really good job of attacking the football. So that's something that I've definitely been focusing more on this week. Obviously, the main focus is take care of the ball. But if you do a really good job taking care of the ball, give yourself a chance to win football games.
There you go. Take care of the football, but maybe not so much to where the passing game misses out on some of those big plays. Having said that, though, shout out to Underdog for one of the biggest plays yet. Because thanks to their partnership, if A.J. Brown scores a touchdown in the Steelers game and the Eagles win, I'm going to give away a signed A.J. Brown jersey to one lucky subscriber at the end of the game stream on Sunday. All I need you to do is make sure to hit that like button and then go comment AJ to be entered for the chance to win. Of course, that's not all, because as the official sponsor of the Philly Special Show, right now all new customers can get up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick in the lobby when you scan the QR code and use my code PhillySpecial, meaning all you got to do is hit on one other pick to win some serious cash. And considering that AJ went all Joker mode this week and has been dominant against the Steelers in his career, anything on the over would probably be a good bet.
And here we go.
Seriously, the last matchup in Philly, AJ went for 156 yards and 3 touchdowns while flat out embarrassing Pittsburgh's corners. Yet it's not just a Philly thing with 11. Since back in Tennessee, AJ gave Mike Tomlin's side all kinds of fits in their lone matchup while toasting their secondary for 153 yards and a score. So again, I think it's fair to have some optimism on what he's about to unleash on Pittsburgh.
Tell your men they work for me now. This is my city.
I'm okay with being whatever bad guy I have to be for the city, the town, whatever the case may be, for my team to holding everybody accountable, be accountable, and to get better.
Honestly, the only thing holding that back is if Jalen plays too conservatively, because over his last 90 passing attempts, only one has gone to AJ for more than 20 yards, despite having at least a couple chances and getting the most time to throw in the entire league.
What happened? Your balls drop off?
The wise guy, huh?
Sorry, no, we're not going there. The passing game's going to be fine, which is why this week I'm going with the A.J. Brown anytime touchdown score, along with the Saquon Barkley to get at least 13 receiving yards, and then I'll take Najee Harris to have at least 15 rushing attempts. Heck, the Steelers have the second highest run percentage in the league, and considering George Pickens is out, I don't know how Harris doesn't reach that number. Again, scan the QR code or just click the link in the description to use my code PhillySpecial to get joined up with the best option in fantasy sports. As always, best of luck to you, please gamble responsibly, and feel free to come hang out during our game stream so we can sweat out the plays together.
I think they're going to force Philly to put the ball in his hands, Jalen Hurts, and force him to throw the ball on the outside.
There's no doubt that's what Pittsburgh's going to try to do, because as you know by now, Jalen's been really good when he doesn't face pressure. However, he's been one of the worst quarterbacks in the league if he does have to face pressure, which personally is why one of the most fascinating matchups for me to watch is going to be the Eagles O-line versus the Steelers pass rush. Like, not only can the Steelers get after the quarterback and limit opposing offenses, but there's a reason they lead the league in takeaways this season. And there's one place that Cam Heyward believes that starts.
If you can't win the line of scrimmage, you're not going to win this game.
And we have depth too, and we got a great 5 up front, and it's going to be a battle. Effort, well disciplined. Like, you can tell they're very, very well coached up front. They all apply the same technique, very army type. Like, they just look all very uniform.
So technically, the Steelers have been like middle of the pack in terms of sack numbers, but they have started to find a rhythm as of late. And the D-line is no doubt their greatest strength, with NFL Defensive Player of the Year favorite TJ Watt leading the way with 9.5 sacks. Granted, having tackles Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata to try to contain the pass rush is a pretty good security blanket. And if they can give Jalen more time, then AJ's going to have significant volume.
He's a freak of nature. He's weighs the same as me. He's bigger than me, and he can move like me. I just can't run routes like him. The most impressive thing about AJ to me is, like, every time the ball, like, you got guys like they catch the ball. Like, when he catches the ball does not move at all. He has some of the most impressive hands. I kind of knew that even in New York and just watching film and seeing how he operate. Me and Daniel used to talk about that a lot, actually. But he's a heck of a player, Hall of Fame caliber player, and excited to have him as my teammate.
By the way, another thing to keep an eye on here will be penalties, because Joey Porter Jr. actually leads the NFL with 15 penalties, which, like I say, is far and away first, and actually the next closest guy is Terrion Arnold, who has 11. However, on the flip side of the ball, the Steelers' O-line has struggled with penalties as well, since right tackle Broderick Jones has allowed 8 sacks and committed 9 penalties. So just saying, another area to keep an eye on would be Nolan Smith as well as Jalen Carter. After all, the Breadman will get rookie Mason McCormick most of the day, so the right side of their line is going to have their hands full. I am curious to see how much OC Arthur Smith uses Justin Fields, if he uses specific packages, because again, without George Pickens there, the offense is going to probably get a little bit unorthodox. Sure, Russell Wilson will still play the vast majority of snaps, but Fields is always a threat for a specific run package or just to try and throw a defense off. Yet for me, the biggest wild card in this matchup is probably going to be special teams, because it paid huge dividends against Baltimore in more than a couple ways. Although seeing how Jake Elliott has struggled recently, and knowing how dominant Chris Boswell has been, that could be the equalizer. But make no mistake, Jake's confidence has not been shaken.
Just keep swinging. I mean, I know the numbers don't look great right now. I feel pretty good about where I'm at hitting the ball. I know a couple of the long ones haven't gone through, and I own that, and I wish they all went through. But like I was telling him, like every kick is very different. I missed a 52-yarder in pretty windy conditions. Obviously, I want to make all of them, but that's not probably realistic all the time. So unfortunately, some of them haven't gone through. I know it's a very black and white position, and it's easy to dissect from the outside, but hit the ball great today. Feel good about where I'm at, and I'm just going to keep going.
Also, for those wondering, and yes, we've been talking about it quite a bit, but Jake actually finally answered if not kicking off or not doing kickoffs has affected him, and he said it has no cause whatsoever. Now, on the topic of missing and Elliott, Steelers safety Deshon Elliott will be missing Sunday's game, which is a significant blow to the Pittsburgh defense. After all, he led the team with a season-high 13 tackles and had a pass deflection last week. In fact, this dude is one of the best run stoppers for their defense, as he's got 96 tackles through 14 weeks, and still played a factor with 6 pass deflections, 1 interception, and 2 forced fumbles up to this point. So to not have him is definitely a big loss, considering the task of trying to slow down Saquon Barkley, and AJ Brown is probably going to go off. Of course, while the Eagles game is on, there is another very significant matchup taking place, as the Detroit Lions attempt to win a game at home versus Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, although Jared Goff doesn't seem to be too concerned.
We got 2 teams on our heels that are pushing us pretty hard, and we got to keep winning, and I'm sure they're just waiting for us to lose.
Let's just say we should all be massive Bills fans this weekend, because with Detroit needing to lose 2 of their final 4 games for the Eagles to have a chance at the 1 seed, this feels like one of those games they'd need to drop. So, given the magnitude of this weekend, everything else going on, I had Eagles writer Anthony DeBona hop on to provide his thoughts on that and everything else around the Birds. Injury update, significant for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially by who they're not going to have. George Pickens was not as much of a surprise. I think very early on, it was like, well, hamstring worse than what was anticipated. Mike Tomlin saying doubtful early in the week. Officially is out, but Deshon Elliott and is it Larry Ogunjobi? I always mispronounce that name. But tell us a little bit more reasons why that, certainly a benefit for Philly or taking advantage there, but what that means for the Steelers.
So Pickens is obviously the biggest one of them all, but we kind of knew about that one already. It seemed like it was trending that direction all throughout the week. But we saw, Pittsburgh got the win last week, but Russell Wilson had his lowest passing yardage as a Steelers quarterback. He only threw for about 150 yards or so. So people want to talk about the Eagles passing game struggles, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But Pittsburgh didn't look too hot last week without George Pickens because Russell Wilson really didn't have that target that he could just throw the ball up to down the field. Like he's throwing those moon balls up in the air and seeing if George Pickens can come down with it. But then the other 2 are notable too, especially Deshon Elliott. He's played, I think, either the 5th or 6th most snaps on their defense, and he's kind of the safety that comes down in the box while Minkah Fitzpatrick stays up high in the single high defense that they like to use. So him being out is a tough blow for the defense that it didn't really seem like many were anticipating. And then Larry Ogunjobi, he's not the name that Keanu Benton and TJ Watt and these other guys along the defensive front are, but he plays a role as well. So the fact that he's out, he played the 3rd most snaps among their interior defensive linemen. So he was essentially a starter for them as well. So all of a sudden, it seems like the Eagles are, for the first time in a couple weeks, they're on the better side of the injury report, whereas the Steelers kind of have some issues that they have to make up for now.
Yeah, it's going to be significant, and you're right. It's kind of surprising by the lack, I guess, of Eagles that will not play. Officially, the only one with a listed designation being out is Britton Covey. Surprising, too, because he was listed as a full participant on the injury report, but due to, I don't know, the neck perhaps, speculation, I don't know if you're being extra careful with that, cautious on that side, but I don't know, do you have any thoughts? Yeah, it's a couple questions or comments about like why is Britton Covey out but a full participant, but just general thoughts on that one.
It was more precautionary because although the other injury was like a shoulder injury, at first people thought it was a collarbone, so maybe it's and the part of the neck that he hurt is somewhere close to somehow like the same side. Maybe I'm reaching, but that might be my take on that because, like you said, usually a full participant is not even going to be listed on the injury report, let alone be listed as out. So I think they're being a little precautionary, maybe because he missed a couple games earlier in the season, and they can afford to really let him sit out because somebody's going to have to be inactive, and all the other receivers look like they're healthy. Johnny Wilson popped up as the DMP the other day, but it seems like he'll be fine. So somebody was going to be inactive, and they do have Cooper DeJean that they do feel comfortable have back there as the punt returner. So I think they'll be all right without him. But yeah, it was still an odd situation.
That would be my only concern of, we trust Cooper DeJean, but I still argue have him as the slot guy. Don't be using him with the punt return. He is good. I just don't want to risk potential injury. But nonetheless, something with Britton Covey there, so monitor that on that side. Thankfully, they are healthy. Really quickly here, and I'm going to briefly mention this. I know that people are very much close done talking to it, but we have not been able to record despite on social media and texting each other. Your thoughts for people that are curious and to get more takeaways of the AJ Jalen drama, maybe some positives actually that came from that, because there's been a lot of negativity, but you had a thought on that side, and as we move forward and move beyond that.
So when it first happened, like the whole AJ Brown comment where he said the passing game, I didn't really think anything of it. I thought it was initially blown completely out of proportion, but then what happened with Brandon Graham is kind of where I was like, uh-oh, and we texted each other with plenty of emojis and concern where it was just like, oh no, did that just happen? Like, I joined the Steelers podcast earlier this week and I was like, Brandon Graham literally would have been, you could have told me any player on the Eagles roster said that, and he would have been my last guess. So it was just like, the fact that he said it, I was like, that's so weird. Like, there must be something really going on. But then the thing that I think is the best outcome out of this whole situation is how, and I've tweeted about it, like people ask, like, oh, what does Nick Sirianni do? He doesn't call plays. He's not in every meeting. Like, what does he do? He doesn't run the offense. Like, what's going on? And I think this week, the way that he handled his appearance on the radio and then his press conference the very next day, and then his messaging on his hoodie that he wore earlier this week as well, where it's just like the three new principles, I guess, that he's going with, where it's like tough, together, and ready, or whatever it was. Those three new words that he had on the hoodie in the press conference, just like he's clearly sending a message to the team where they need to block out the outside noise. And we've seen like the mic'd up of him in the meetings and whatnot, where pretty much don't sniff yourselves, don't get too high, don't get too low. And like with this situation in particular, where you see all these guys basically come out, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Jordan Mailata, they all said the right things. They all kind of just put the fire out with their words, and now they can go into the game putting all of that kind of behind them. I know maybe they will try and feed AJ Brown more, and we'll talk about the game, but I think the fact that they were able to kind of put all of this behind them with the media and kind of make it basically not even a topic anymore as far as the Philadelphia media goes. I'm sure the national media, and they're still going to take it. I saw them being called the Philadelphia Egos and all like whatever's going on. So that's that. They're just going to have to quiet that with their play on the field. But as far as the local media market and the concern amongst fans, it seems like that's all been quieted thanks to Nick Sirianni and the message that he's kind of communicated to the team since the whole situation happened.
And thank goodness, because, you know, I've said some negative things. I think a lot of people have. And Sirianni at moments, you know, is like, okay, maybe needs a little more maturity, acting in a different way. But you're right. The messaging that he had for this past week, rallying the troops, rallying everyone, kind of staying on that same message was really positive to see. Do you take anything, just to wrap this one up, but do you take anything, though, from the passing game, I guess, you know, specifically in the offensive side, but also holistically, even for the defense, just from the Carolina one itself? Are you concerned at all about the struggles? It was a little bit of a lackluster performance, but naturally, you know, you can look at it and say, well, there's some trap games, and you know, obviously with the Steelers now this week, any level of concern, where are you at there?
Well, firstly, I think just as far as that game last week, that people were really underestimating the Panthers. They were playing pretty good football. I know it sounds crazy because of their record, but the last 4 games before that, they were all single possession games, and it took literally the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs to hit game-winning field goals to win the game. So the fact that they played up to that level against those teams, and then people were complaining that the Eagles only won by 6 points, it was just like, I mean, I get it. It wasn't the prettiest victory. They didn't throw the ball all over the field. Obviously, Jalen Hurts, the passing game just has been lacking and inconsistent all season. But at the same time, I tweeted about it where at this point last season, you had the people standing outside of Novacare Complex with big signs saying run the ball because they were passing too much and they were losing. But now they're running the ball too much and dominating teams on the ground. Even the best run defenses, Baltimore was one of the best run defenses, and they couldn't stop them. And they're on a 9-game winning streak, and people are still complaining that they're not passing enough. It's just like, I said this literally when we recorded during the bye week after they were 2-2, and it was just like, what's going to happen moving forward? I was like, the Eagles literally just can't care how it looks anymore. Like, if it means Jalen Hurts, I said it at the time, throwing for 150 yards and them winning, then so be it. Like, it doesn't matter how much these guys are getting paid. You need to just lean into what works. And sure enough, 9 games later, they're on a hot streak and look like one of the best teams in the league, despite not throwing for 350 yards or whatever Jared Goff and the Lions are doing. So it's just like, if you're winning, I don't really think it's much of a problem, especially with how well this defense is playing. And I feel like that's what I continue to go back to, is just, if the offense was struggling like this and the defense was still giving up 25 points a game like they were last season, or 27, whatever it was, then I would be concerned. But the fact that this defense has been so rock solid for so many weeks in a row, like basically since the bye week, I just feel like that's always like their safe play where they can just like, hey, we struggled for a couple of drives. The defense might give up a touchdown drive here or there, but for the most part, they're going to shut them down and take the ball away eventually. So this is going to be a tough test this week, but I feel like this team is in really good shape moving forward, even with the passing struggles, because honestly, I feel like it could only get better from here. I mean, Jalen Hurts throwing for 108 yards or whatever it was, 88 net passing, or however you want to do it. Like, I don't see him doing that again. So the fact they were able to still win and that happened, I feel like it's more of a promising sign than anything.
Exactly, because they've got, to your point, you're leaning on an elite running game, you're leaning on an elite defense, and you're going into the stretch where, we'll see where the Eagles end up. But if the Eagles get the number 1 seed, then all roads go through the link, and cold weather football games, like, it doesn't get much better than the MO or the recipe of saying, like, all right, guys, we got a good rushing attack, we got a good defense. So I'm with you. I'm with you of the, like, let's pump the brakes, let's relax. It was a little bit of a game where, did we play up to the level that we should have been playing, that the Eagles could have or should have? No, but it still was a team that has been trending in the right direction. It's the NFL. It's a week-by-week league. Hopefully we'll see Detroit lose this week against Buffalo, but that's neither here nor there. The biggest and most important area of business is to take care of what's on your plate, and that is officially the Pittsburgh Steelers, the battle for Pennsylvania. And I guess to start out, as we normally do with this, what are the areas that you see the Eagles can take advantage of? Where are the areas that they have strengths and can kind of maximize that against this Pittsburgh Steelers team?
Courtesy of Next Gen Stats, they put out a ton of good information. I kind of try and share it on Twitter whenever I can, but I found a couple of nuggets on there that really stood out. So the Steelers use single high looks and single high safety formations at the second highest rate in the NFL. And then surely teams do that a ton against the Eagles. They face the 7th highest. So they've kind of used to been seeing that all season because teams like to load the box and try to stop Saquon Barkley. But unfortunately for those defenses, and maybe for the Steelers this week, Saquon Barkley averages 6.8 yards per carry against single high formations. So if that's what the Steelers are going to lean on, they've been using it at a 63.7% of the time. So, I mean, maybe things change now with Deshon Elliott out. Maybe they don't feel as comfortable and they want to have a second guy back there, or however it might work. But regardless, Saquon Barkley's running for 6.1 yards per carry overall and then 6.8 against these single high defenses. So if the Steelers want to continue to use that look, it'll be interesting to see if they can slow down Saquon Barkley, who seemingly nobody can shut down so far. So that's the first one. Moving on, another one that's kind of this one's a flip to the defense is Milton Williams, who's kind of been underrated this season. I feel like Jalen Carter is getting a lot of the attention, but rightfully so. He's a phenomenal player. But Milton Williams has really been playing out of his mind in a contract year. So he's actually has the highest pressure rate among all defensive tackles with at least 150 pass rushes this season at 14.4%. So he primarily lines up as the right defensive tackle, which puts him most of the time against opposing left guards. And sure enough, Eagles' old friend Isaac Seumalo is the Steelers' starting left guard. And unfortunately for the Steelers, he's kind of been struggling in pass protection this season. He's allowed the 7th highest pressure rate among left guards. So the Eagles can I know Jalen Carter gets all the attention. They might be doubling him as well. It might be another week where we see Milton Williams get another sack or two and make a couple of tackles for loss and really put his stamp on the game. And then lastly, flipping to the other side of the ball, Steelers' offensive line, not the greatest. Is just, especially their offensive tackles. Left tackle Dan Moore has allowed 7 sacks, and he had a strong start to the season, but he's allowed 5 sacks in their last 4 games. So it's not looking too good for them on the left side. And then right tackle Broderick Jones, who a lot of the Eagles' Georgia players are familiar against going with in practice probably. He's allowed 8 sacks this season, 12 total pressures in their last 4 games. So especially in these last 4 weeks, Pittsburgh's offensive tackle duo has been struggling. So the Eagles' defense should be able to feast on them as well and get the pass rush going.
I like what you're saying there. And we were texting, or I guess talking about this before recording. I'll just throw out the idea of, I've mentioned a couple different picks or plays for the game, but another wild card to just go with would be a potential Nolan Smith anytime sack because, as you say, like you're familiar with Georgia guys, right? They're familiar with each other for anyone who's played at really any level of competition. But as you get going against guys that you practice against every day at practice, and then you get comfortably like, oh yeah, I can beat this dude. Like for Nolan Smith, you go, oh yeah, it's Broderick Jones, right? And then you also look back and say the other sack or one of the other sacks that he had earlier in the season was against another former Georgia offensive tackle in Amarius Mims. So again, I'll just put that out there. Like my guy Nolan Smith, look out. We might get another sack.
And Warren McClendon Jr. was another Georgia offensive tackle that had to step in for the Rams, and I think he gave up 2 sacks to the Eagles. So these former
Okay,
Georgia
now.
Bulldog offensive tackles have been having a rough time against the Eagles. So we'll see how Broderick Jones fares this week.
Take the defensive guys, maybe not necessarily the offensive guys. No offense to other Georgia dogs out there, but I like it. So we just put those out there right now for obviously the strengths, the areas that Philly can obviously exploit. Now on the flip side of that, any potential weaknesses, areas of concern that you see based on this matchup, and the Steelers can maybe exploit on their side?
So the thing, I know Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson have been playing out of their minds this season, but the Steelers just have unbelievable trio of edge rushers and TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig. So those three, Nick Herbig was a guy that I was really high on coming out of college, and he's really come on in the last couple of weeks with Alex Highsmith out, but now he's returned as well. So now they can kind of just roll these guys in on the edges, and it's going to be a tough test for Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. I know they played well. The Eagles use them on an island a ton where they don't even really give them much help on either side with the guards. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, because TJ Watt, he was the first guy that Nick Sirianni kind of mentioned when he was asked about the Steelers defense and why they have so many takeaways this season. He's like, number 90. He said it like right away. So I'm sure Jeff Stoutland's got his hands full trying to scheme up a way to shut him down. He shut down Aaron Donald and other premier pass rushers before, so we'll see what happens in that regard. Then I feel like you have to also mention Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's kind of the guy that makes it all go in their secondary, and he's the reason why they're able to use those single high looks so effectively, because he can basically do it all and he can identify it all. So the chess match between him and Jalen Hurts pre-snap, I think is going to be really interesting to watch. And then lastly, this might be more of a boring choice, and it might be more of a weakness for the Eagles, but you have to point out the kicking battle, because Jake Elliott hasn't made any kicks over 50 yards this season. He's 0 of 5. And meanwhile, on the flip side, Chris Boswell is 11 of 13 from 50-plus yards, and he looks like one of the best kickers in the NFL. So if it comes down to a low-scoring matchup where neither defense is letting the other team get into the end zone and you're settling for these 40-plus, 50-plus yard field goals, it might be a rough time for the Eagles unless Jake Elliott can kind of get in that funk and finally start going.
I hope not. I hope that it doesn't get to that case, but you bring up a great point, and that was my thought as well, is like, because Jake's just, he's been struggling. He said in the press conference, he's like, hey, I've still got a lot of confidence. He didn't sound shaken. Of course, you're going to say that, I guess, regardless, but still, like, he didn't sound that way. He's believing it, said that he's been kicking the ball well. Just got to keep, going through the same method there. He also dispelled the notions, because, I think we've talked about it a number of times. You tweeted it out also for the kickoffs. Said that it doesn't play a factor, right? Like that he's got the kicking net. He can still get up his practice, his warm-ups before he goes out there and kicks. So the fact that he's not kicking on kickoffs.
I'm still not totally buying that. I'm sorry.
He says it doesn't. So
people reply to my tweet saying that. And it's just like, to me, being out there and being able to, like, you're basically kicking the ball at max power on those kickoffs. And even if you're not, you're taking a little bit off of it, but you could still, like, see the wind, how that's a factor, like the trajectory. You just get that feel, especially with how much the Eagles offense scores. Like, you would be getting a couple, 3, 4, 5 kickoffs a game where you're able to kind of just really test your leg, really see how it feels against the wind. Whereas kicking into a net, you're not really getting a feel for the wind. You're kicking a yard or two in front of you right into a net. Like, you're not doing anything. So, like, sure, like the muscle memory, whatever, might be the same, but I just think being able to actually be on the field and get that feeling, it's just like, I think it's totally different. But he's obviously not going to say that. I don't think he'll go against Michael Clay's decision where they're having Braden Mann do the kickoffs or whatever. It doesn't seem like that's something that they would change anyway, but I do think it has a factor, because all of a sudden he's used to kicking 75 plus times a year with these kickoffs, and now all of a sudden he's not doing it at all, and suddenly he can't kick from 50 plus yards. Like, that's too much of I don't know. I think it has to be a factor.
You get these really close games, and you got these teams that, like we can mention Detroit, for example, right? Like, this is a big, important game with Pittsburgh, but at some point it feels like you're on a crash course to, meet the Detroit Lions in the playoffs. Now, whether that's in Detroit, whether that's in Philly, who knows? But it does feel like it's going to be one of those teams. And if it came down to a field goal kick, like, I'm going to be honest, the Detroit should feel confident in their ability to make a game-winning field goal. And for us, it's as of right now, I don't know, and that's a terrible place. I know that some people are throwing out the Missy Elliott, like nicknames that he's. It's like, okay, come on, like
I haven't heard that yet. I'm sorry.
So okay, there you go. I've seen the Missy Elliott. It's good. It's creative, but it's not doing him any favors either. So I hopefully this is just, it's craziness and we move beyond it. He gets into a rhythm, hits a few field goals here. I was told by someone, I don't know if this is true, I probably should have looked this up, but I was told that the weather forecast should be decent, not as severe winds as it was for the last game. But I guess we'll see. He needs a few of those to go through and maybe get right back on track.
Philadelphia might have to pull like the Trey Turner when he was in that hitting slump and they just did the standing ovation. Whenever Jake Elliott takes the field for a field goal, the crowd just might have to go crazy and just be like, "We got you. We got your back, Jake."
That's
no
honestly,
Missy Elliott. We got you. So
no Missy Elliott. Please, nobody yell that. Nobody boo Jake, and nobody definitely don't do the Missy Elliott chants. That's not a bad idea. If people are watching this and you're going to the game, why not? If Jake Elliott goes out, the standing ovation for Jake Elliott, I think that's a fantastic idea because he's even said it before. He's like, "Look, I have confidence. Not a whole lot is going to shake me, but I do hear the boos or I hear the criticism, and it's not like it helps. It doesn't help anything. So sure, let's take that.
Because I mean, kicking is already such like a lonely thing. Like you literally just even in practice, they're like pretty much by themselves, like or with the punter and the long snapper, like they consider themselves like the 3-man operation or whatever. So like it's just they're already lonely. So now this is happening. They're just psyching themselves out, like playing scenarios out through their head. So like. Maybe they do. He does need all the support he can get. We'll see.
I like it. I appreciate the positivity, the optimism there. Let's get behind him. Not Missy Elliott. Anyway, bringing up the Lions before that, because there is a big important game. Some people would buy into the mindset, and I personally am here as well. Detroit hosting Buffalo. Then after that, they have a game at Chicago. They have a game at San Francisco, and then they close out a home game versus the Vikings. For the Eagles to get the 1 seed, yes, you have to take care of business. You have to basically win out probably from now on, but the Detroit Lions would still have to lose 2 games. Being that the case, do you feel like, I guess twofold, does Detroit lose this weekend, and do they need to lose this weekend for Philly to have any shot at the 1 seed?
I think so, because, I mean, if you just look at I've kind of lost all confidence in the Bears at this point, even after firing their head coach, and it just seems like they're still not going to get back on track this year. I really thought the Packers were going to pull it off last week against the Lions, and I thought that was going to be like one of the first ones that was they were going to lose, and then maybe the Bills would give them that second loss, but that obviously didn't happen. So I think the Eagles I was really confident before last week that the Eagles were going to lock up the number 1 seed eventually, but now it's just not looking too good because of the fact that the Lions have to lose 2, Eagles have to win out. I think the Vikings have to lose a game as well for it to happen, which is totally possible. But it's just like, I don't know. It seems like the NFC Championship game might have to go through Detroit, which might be better for the Eagles because they've honestly played better on the road. I mean, at home, every game has been decided by 1 possession, and they've lost a few at home. So the fact that they're playing on the road maybe might be a good thing for them in the playoffs. So get the 2 games at the first 2 rounds at home, then have to travel to Detroit. Maybe wouldn't be the end of the world.
Okay. All right. Either way, I think we'll be fine either direction. I would still, as you know, I'm sure that you and most people would like host a game at the link, host the NFC Championship. And we'll see.
And you would get Jake Elliott out of the wind. He would be kicking in a dome.
Okay, well then you know what? Scrap what I said. Maybe it is better to go to Detroit. That's what you need.
Maybe we'll see.
Play in the domes. Oh, there's a whole nother story there. We won't go that direction. To end on this one, as we normally do, because like we say, Buffalo hopefully can beat Detroit. But for the Eagles game, score predictions, do you have a confident feeling here on this one? I believe it's 6-point spread based on where the lines are for the Eagles. But what are you going with for the score prediction?
So I mentioned that I joined a Steelers podcast earlier this week, and that was before the 3 starters were ruled out for Pittsburgh, and the Eagles pretty much had a clean bill of health. I said Eagles win 27-24 in that one. But I'm going to backtrack a little bit in a more positive way for the Eagles. I'm going to go 24-17 Eagles.
I personally went with, I said this earlier in the week, I will stick with it. I say 28-17. More of a beating, 11-point win. I say, why not? Jake Elliott has 4 extra points.
I was going to say, you're not confident.
It's just, you score 4 touchdowns. You make life easy. AJ Brown has 3 of them.
Maybe I'll change my prediction. Make it 20. Yeah, that might be the way to go, actually.
We'll see. And either way, I think AJ is going to score a touchdown. But that does bring us up to the other and final prediction, of course, is the Eagles' first touchdown scorer. So you have been, I got to give you credit because you've been should have been correct for 3 weeks in a row, quite honestly. But last week, Saquon scored a touchdown. I'm convinced that he scored a touchdown, and it just didn't get reviewed because Nick Sirianni chose not to challenge it. But for the life of me, I was like, oh my gosh, he scored a touchdown. Like Anthony just called it. Because before you had Kyren Williams, who you got correct. Then you had Mark Andrews, who you got correct. And then you took Saquon Barkley via text. But I have proof if anybody's going to debate that because we didn't actually record last week. I've got the text and proof. So 3 for 3, we're going to call it officially for us. 3 for 3.
It's
to make it 4 for 4.
A little asterisk.
Well, what the heck.
So, I mean, I went with the Eagles player last week unofficially, like I said, through text. Unfortunately, I'm going to flip back to the opposition this time.
Oh, no.
I'm going to go with another tight end. I'm going to go Pat Freiermuth, who's had touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. He's had touchdown in 3 of their last 5 games. And with George Pickens out, it seems like he's kind of their go-to guy, especially in the red zone. So I think the Eagles defense, they've been playing really well, but it usually seems like they give up one of those early touchdown drives, and usually it's the first or second possession. So if that happens where either the Eagles get the ball and slow out and then the Steelers have it, or both offenses start slow and then the Steelers eventually score, I think Pat Freiermuth is going to be my first touchdown scorer, unfortunately. But like I said, I still have the Eagles winning the game. So
okay. Well, it doesn't matter. As long as the Eagles win, then you can take the opposing team. There are a lot of people, and understandably so, that will not take an opposing team's player. So I can appreciate that as well. I'm going to stick with, this is probably a very chalky pick, but I'm going to take A.J. Brown. First touchdown scorer, A.J. Brown. He's got to get going. I hope it's not too much of a force. That's really the only kind of anxious area that I have is it too much to go to A.J. Brown? So then you're kind of like, yeah, maybe we get danger there.
So what's going to happen is it's going to be first play of the game, A.J. Brown, slant against Joey Porter Jr., 70-yard touchdown, boom. They don't have to over-target him. Just get it out of the way.
That's perfect. I would gladly take that. Yes. One play. Boom. Touchdown. Done.
There you go.
Hits it. Yes. Okay. Well, actually, one other one that I'll ask you, because I just went ahead and picked it anyway. This is my super far outlier bet, but I'm taking a Q for a first interception. Do you think he gets a first interception this game?
I mean, Russell Wilson's been putting it in a little bit of danger. Last week he did. I mean, he doesn't really turn it over too much, but he's thrown a couple questionable passes that could have been picked off. So maybe it happens. I mean, especially with, like we mentioned, the way their offensive line has been struggling, that they can get him under pressure. He panics a little bit and just chucks one up there, or gets tipped or whatever. I feel like it could happen. This could be finally the week that Quinyon Mitchell gets a pick and really puts his name in that Defensive Rookie of the Year conversation, but we'll see.
Okay. You did talk around it, though. That didn't sound like a yes or no. That was a
all right. So I will go with no, but
okay.
I will say you can, in my mind, safely take a Milton Williams sack if that's available, a Jalen Carter sack, and a Nolan Smith sack. I think all three get a sack this week.
Ooh, okay. Hey, that's a pretty good payout there. You can take. I know you can take 2 of them. You might not be able to take Milton, but you can take Jalen and Nolan. You might be able to get all 3. So
Jalyx Hunt. Our guy Jalyx Hunt, maybe?
That would be actually much higher as well. So
that's plus
that's the extreme. So, well, why not? So, okay, well, you heard it here first. Anthony DeBona with the not guaranteed, of course, gamble responsibly, but know, there's the predictions, picks, and thoughts, everything there. The first touchdown scorer has been money 2 of the 3 weeks officially, but it's been 3.
Hey, they at least gave Saquon Barkley a chance within the 1 yard.
They did,
That was surprising. So
and then they decided
they tried.
Yeah,
it just never mind. This is
that
automatic.
Didn't work. We don't know how to do anything else from the 1 yard line. It's time for the brotherly show. Either way, they got the win. Hopefully it's another one, the 10th win, break the streak. You guys let us know as well. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, give us your score predictions. Who's your first touchdown scorer? As courtesy of Underdog 2, appreciate them. But going to be giving away a signed A.J. Brown jersey if A.J. Brown scores a touchdown and the Eagles win. But then we'll be giving away to one subscriber and commenter. Make sure to follow Anthony at DeBona NFL. I'll be having an article actually linked in the description too. So Anthony's got good coverage on the game, all the streaks, everything to be mindful of. But appreciate you joining again.
Yes, it's always fun, and I'm excited for this matchup. I feel like everybody was hyped about the Eagles-Ravens a couple weeks ago, but this might be the real test for them.
Okay, we'll see. We'll call it a dub. I think it's 11 points. Anthony has it at 7. Again, appreciate you guys, and as always, until next time, go Birds.